Joining us now from London is Richard Engel, NBC News chief foreign correspondent, who has covered al-Qaeda and Ayman al-Zawahiri for decades, a man who knows more than your average bear about the Egyptian Islamic radicalism in Cairo that shaped Zawahiri. Richard, my friend, thank you for interrupting your vacation tonight. Thank you for being up at Dark 30 for us once again on this historic night.
It is a historic night, and of course, I think it's a very important night. And yes, I've been covering Ayman al-Zawahiri since the mid-1990s. I was a reporter in Egypt when terrorist attacks were becoming an increasing problem in the country. You mentioned the Luxor attack, when a group of Islamists went on a rampage and just started massacring tourists in front of the Pharaonic monuments there. And then he decided to keep going, and he joined up with Osama bin Laden, founded al-Qaeda, first as this international front against Jews and Crusaders, and now we have come to where we are today. And I think there are really two ways of looking at it. What you just heard from Admiral Kirby was a kind of a positive spin on it. It shows that the United States is still capable, that if the Taliban goes back on its deal, and clearly it was going back on its deal, or at least elements of the Taliban were going back on the deal and welcomed in al-Qaeda, that they wouldn't be able to get away with it because America has eyes on and has the ability to carry out lethal strikes from the sky. So you could say, oh, the policy is working because if there's al-Qaeda infiltration or presence, the U.S. can take care of it. But there's another way of looking at it. It shows how confident and how arrogant, one might say, the Taliban have become. That even after swearing that they would never host al-Qaeda leaders again, that they would never go back and repeat the past, that they don't just have an al-Qaeda leader, they have the al-Qaeda leader. He's hosted right in the center of Kabul. He's there for months, and it shows that they believe they can do whatever they want. I was in Afghanistan after U.S. troops withdrew from the country, after the Taliban drove them out, and I met Taliban leaders, and they believed that what happened was a miracle, that they were given this victory because of a gift from God, that they were untouchable. You could look in their eyes. If you ever noticed, a lot of American reporters were going around with the Taliban. There was no hostility. They were not just proud of what they had done and wanted to show it off. They believed that this was a miracle and that it was their duty to show the world God's actions on earth. So when you have that kind of mentality, you're not really intimidated by what the U.S. is threatening to do. You say, well, we've gone through hard times in the past, and look where our faith brought us. So they had bin Laden, they had Ayman al-Zawahiri in the country near the presidential palace for months. The fact that the U.S. got him shows that the U.S. still has very good intelligence there, still was able to get informants who were able to establish a pattern of life inside the building. But over time, will those informants continue to be as good, and will they be able to find other targets who aren't necessarily as famous as Ayman al-Zawahiri, who the United States has been tracking for decades?
Well, and as you lay that out, I mean, this is obviously a very rude interruption to any reverie that the Taliban might have been under in terms of them believing that they were being, that they were divinely inspired and that they were being divinely protected for their actions. This is going to interrupt that in some ways. And I asked Admiral Kirby a moment ago if they're anticipating retaliation from the Taliban, and if so, is the Taliban capable of inflicting pain on the United States in a way that will actually hurt? He didn't answer. He basically said, we'll watch for that. But what do you think their reaction will be to this strike now that it's happened? And again, I think probably surprised them, given how willing they were to hide him relatively in a relatively easy to find place.
So, first of all, there are big divisions in the Taliban, which is one thing that the Taliban weren't expecting. You heard Admiral Kirby talk about the Haqqani network. That is a big group of the Taliban that is particularly close to al-Qaeda, and not all of the other factions in the Taliban support them, but they are still a very, very powerful faction, perhaps the most powerful in terms of security. So a very large segment of the Taliban will be shamed that this happened. They hosted this important figure with whom they have a relationship going back many, many years, and he was killed in their territory. You know, the Taliban released a statement after a drone strike this weekend. It seems to be the same drone strike. They didn't say who the target was at the time. And they called it a violation of their sovereignty against international norms. And they said that it could close the doors for future cooperation and opportunities. So in a way, the response was a rejection, but fairly measured when you look at other statements from the Taliban. So they were angry. They're saying it's going to close the door for other cooperation, and it's a problem, but they weren't threatening to burn down the White House or carry out an attack like this. But there will certainly be elements within the Taliban and within al-Qaeda who will want to seek revenge. That said, he was not a particularly charismatic leader. He never really filled the shoes of Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden was the face. He was the brand name of al-Qaeda. Ayman al-Zawahiri was the legacy player. He was the intellectual. He was the scholar, if you will, establishing the bedrock of the ideology. But he never commanded a lot of personal loyalty within the group. The next leader might be able to be more effective in that way.